All right, what's going on, guys? So today I'm going to walk through my Logic Pro 10 orchestral instruments mock-up, what I did for the Say Something arrangement that I put out last week. If you have not checked that out, there's two different versions of it. One of them is just the 4 flutes, and then the other one has the full orchestral instruments there. Tony's in the background, and I feel like he's going to laugh because I was saying things wrong. But anyways, so as we go in here, my goal here is basically to just walk you through what my process was and why I chose certain instruments and how I made them sound a little bit more realistic than just your standard MIDI. So let's go ahead and jump into the screen, and then you'll see right here, this is my mess of a session. So half of it I didn't even use. Basically everything from measure 129 on is not involved in this at all. It's kind of just MIDI that I had there as pieces that I thought I might need but didn't actually need in the end. So we're only going to look at what I have highlighted here. So like I said, make sure you listen to the song because I can't play the whole thing right here for the copyright strike. I don't want to get a copyright claim. But right off the bat, so we start with a piano, right? So I'm just going to jump right in and I'll show you the instruments I used. I'll solo them out for you so you can hear them, and I'll explain what it is and why I used it. So we have 2 pianos. If I play that. Right, and so this piano plays for the entire song. Now, I chose 2 pianos for this because I wanted to create my own sound, basically. So the first piano is playing from Contact. So I used the Alicia Keys piano. And there's actually 2 of them because I needed one for the right hand and one for the left hand. And I loved the sound of this piano, but the problem is that by itself, here, I'll play it by itself. It's kind of thin, right? Like if I jump in the middle. I really wanted there to be a little bit more weight to the piano and have it really, carry the song because it's the main instrument for the whole thing. So what I did is I added this second piano that is from Spitfire Audio. It's the soft piano from Labs, which is actually free. So if you're looking for a good soft piano, definitely download that from Spitfire Audio. And so those 2 layered together came out like this. So it has a lot more weight to it, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So after that, what happens in the song is we have the flutes actually start coming in before anything else happens. So I was able to find a MIDI file for the version that Pentatonix plays, and I really liked what they did because they have so many harmonies and moving, modulation and everything between just those 4 voices. And I think they had a cello underneath or something like that. And I wanted to build that in because I was focusing on doing a flute cover, right? But I was like, how can I make this more interesting? I don't want to just do a straight up cover of the song with piano and strings over it. So I blended the 2, and I really liked what they did. We're going to get to I labeled it as the soft section here, but it's really like the breakdown of the song. I really liked what they did there, so I really wanted to build that in. So I had to change the key of what they did. I believe I had to change it up a major 6th. I don't have the original MIDI to show you that anymore. That's what this is all the way over here is this stuff. But I just transposed the entire song up to the original key of the song, which is what my piano and the strings and MIDI was in, which I believe was D major or B minor. And then, so once that was transposed, almost everything kind of just worked. I just had to change the octaves to work with the flute. So I'm going to go ahead and just solo these out so you can hear how that starts working with the piano. And it's pretty much what you hear in the actual cover. Okay, so I did not focus on making the flute sound realistic at all because I just didn't need to, because I knew I was going to replace them. But what I did do is I thought about the arrangement. So this bottom one, basically flute 4 here, is a lot of bass notes over and over and over. It's just bass through the entire song. So what I wanted to do was keep that just centered in the middle of the mix. So that's what you're seeing here. In the actual final mix, I went just a little bit to the left, just so that it wasn't right on top of where the main vocal was in the center of the mix. And then going up from there, flutes 2 and 3, they play, the parts themselves play off of each other a lot. They do a lot of similar, like harmony parts in unison rhythms, but the parts are harmonies. So what I did for those is just focus on having one of them be very much on the left and one of them was panned all the way to the right, so that they would work together and just spread out the sound and give it a nice wide sound. Especially because with 4 flutes, they're all playing the same register. You have to do something to help them separate from each other and not just be a mixture of all the same tones coming up together and sounding like shit, quite frankly. Then the main flute is just the actual melody line, and that sits dead center, and I made sure that was up in volume a little bit too. So skipping ahead a little bit to where the next instrument comes in, we have these string parts. Now, there's a couple that I actually did not use for the final mix. It looks like it's this one because it's muted. So what I'll do is just solo out the next ones that come in. So these, let me show you what these are. Oh, I didn't tell you about the patch. This is just your, let's see, I used the Contact Factory selection for my flute sounds. Like I said, it's just something to sound more or less like a flute so that I know what that's going to be like in the mix. It didn't really make that big of a difference to me either way. It's just basically a placeholder, right? So then with the strings, these strings, I have 3 different layers. And so I'll play a little bit of what that's like, and then I'll break it down. So I personally love when these strings come in because it's just adding such this lush layer of strings. They're nice and rich. That's exactly what I wanted. And so what I did in order to create that, let me take everything else out so you can hear just the strings. Okay, so these still are MIDI strings, right? I could have made them sound better. I could have worked with them a little bit more, but the focus was really on the flute. So I focused on the arrangement and just, getting the song to be at a place that I felt comfortable with it. But if I really wanted to spend more time with these, I could have, right? So what I did for the actual instruments, let's see, the first one is the high strings. So once again, I'm going to open up my Contact player. And if you're not familiar with Contact and Contact libraries, I'm probably going to make a separate video just on that to show not only what I'm using, but also what it is and how it works. But for now, basically, if you're not familiar, all you need to know is that each one of these is a separate set of instruments or a different instrument. And it was recorded by audio engineers in a studio. Each note by a certain player or a certain instrument was recorded and then packaged together into this sample library that I can play on the piano over here and get all of the notes as if it was actually that instrument playing in the piece. So that's just quick overview of that in case you're watching this and aren't familiar with how this part of this works. So what I have here is the Albion library from Spitfire Audio. They actually did an update, so I have both versions of it. So I'm using the older version of it, but it's an amazing library with a massive orchestra that was sampled. I want to say it was a 109-piece orchestra. So it just adds this huge dimension to your pieces when you use it. And so here we have strings high, which is pretty much violins and violas. And then you can choose which articulation you want. So right here, I have the long articulation loaded up. And that's what our first layer here is. So I'll play that by itself. Okay. And one of the most important things when you're programming MIDI is to make sure that you're also programming your dynamics and your expression, which for the most part is on your mod wheel on a keyboard. And then sometimes there's a second one. You can't really use the pitch wheel for it. It just doesn't work too well. But you want to have two wheels or knobs or sliders or something to be able to program in the dynamics and expression. Now, different libraries have different parameters that you can change, but the Spitfire Audio ones, for the most part, is dynamics and expression. And what that does is actually changes the way that the instrument is being played, like whether they're pushing softly on the string or, you know, they're digging in a little bit more to get some more volume. It just changes the color and makes it sound much more human, which is just that's everything you need when you're working with MIDI. You want to do everything you can to make it sound human. And so I'll bring up this specific piece of MIDI that you just heard, right? So here are the notes. And now the color goes to each velocity, which is how hard the note is hit. And then the other things I'm talking about, if I go into my automation here, you have modulation and expression. So if I pull up the modulation, you see all of these, you know, hills and valleys. This is all stuff that I've programmed in to try and mimic what an actual player would do. And I basically made expression be more or less the same because they're going to move together, right? They're going to be more or less, it's going to be getting louder as you're playing with more expression. So if I play this again with this up, you'll see how those work together. Right, so you could see right there, like it just completely drops off in both the pitch, like the actual note drops off, but then also the volume as well. And so that's what this allows us to do so that it's not just one straight, just all the way through, right? Like that's not at all what we want. So let's go to the next library that I added in here, which this is the low strings. So this is essentially the next piece of the orchestra. Let me pull up that. It's probably going to be the exact same plugin, just the low version. Yep. So we got Contact here. And this is also the Albion library. This is the low. So this is the basses and the cellos. And then also the long patch for that. And then those just work together. So if I play that on its own, and I'll pull up the MIDI for you to see it too. Here, I'll put the expression there for you, or that's modulation. Right, so on its own, it's not really doing much, but when you combine those together, you start getting the harmonies coming in and more of a chordal structure. And then that's what's adding that texture and that richness to the song overall. Right? Like that sounds pretty good. Then the last thing we have here is one more layer. And if I open up this one, it looks like it's playing the same parts. And this one is the Cinematic Studio solo strings. And this one has a cello loaded up, right? So this is just one single cello that's playing the same part as the low parts. And what that's doing is giving essentially a leader for that section, right? Like first chair of an orchestra, they're the one kind of leading the section. That's what I created here, just so that it stood out a little bit instead of having however many players it is, 16 or something like that. So if I play that by itself, you'll hear that. right? Now this one could certainly use some more programming. It's not nearly as realistic and good as I would like it to be, but it gets tucked into the mix anyway. It's just adding some clarity to what that low end is. So then all three of those together, you get this. I'll add the piano in. Cool. So that's the string parts. Now we have some other stuff that happens as it builds up. But I'm going to talk about the percussion next because that's what comes in next in the song. So I was playing around with this. What's up? Do we have to go right now? Yeah. All right. I got to pause this.
2 hours later.
I have beautiful cup of espresso at whatever time it is. It's 5:30 at night right now. Yeah, so we had to go sell some cymbals for a drum set, and now we are back. We're going to jump right back into this arrangement. We are starting with percussion, and I'm definitely going to be a little caffeinated out, so bear with me. All right, so let's jump in. My goal with the percussion was just to add something to keep the song moving, right? The song it was just dragging on, honestly. So I wanted to find a way for this to not feel like it was just dragging on, especially with the flute. Like there was just no rhythm to it because everything was this elongated thing. That's the caffeine talking, except for the piano. So I wanted to add some percussion. So what I did was, let me go through one by one. So I have Easter Island, basically that right there is the percussion. So I have these Easter Island hits. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you too. Okay, so I have these Easter Island hits, which is also from the Albion Library. So here's what that looks like. And that is just like this big boomy sub bass sounding thing to give it some depth and that bottom end. So here's what that sounds like. It's just a single hit, right? Like that's it. So along with that, I added a timpani hit. This is kind of how this started developing. Okay, so the timpani hit by itself, right? Like it's barely even anything. But since there wasn't enough there, what I did was I added a roll before that happened. It looks like I get two here. Let's see what this is. Yeah, so that's just to add a little bit of attack to the actual timpani roll, which is this one. So if you put those two together, here's what we get. Right, and then add in the Easter Island hits. Okay, so if you're wearing headphones, you can hear that the Easter Island hits is really just adding some boom, some impact to when the downbeat actually comes in. Then the next piece we have here is this, it says timpani, but I'm pretty sure that was a bass drum. Yeah, and this loaded weird, but it is timpani, so let me play this. Yeah, it's not playing anything. So what that means is I actually didn't end up using that. See, I know that the bass drum I was going to replace, it sounded like garbage. I'll play it for you. It was not my favorite sound. It was a placeholder and I was going to replace it and then I ended up not doing it. A studio concert bass drum is what I had there just to kind of get the ball rolling. It was just, I don't know, it sounds thin. It just wasn't the sound I was going for. So I just muted that out. And clearly that's what I did with the track above as well. And so that pretty much ends up being what we had until later on. So this first time that the percussion comes in, the only other thing is this crash cymbal, which is just it's a roll coming into it. That's it. That's all it needs. So the first time around, it's just some textures. So if we put that all into context, we get this creation here. So that's it. And you can see how it's acting as a transition between the verse and the chorus. It's building up the emotion a little bit, right? Like it's bringing us forward through the piece. Then the next time that comes in, we have a little bit more strings to start talking about and everything. But let me finish up with the percussion at first, because that pretty much stays the same throughout the rest of the song. We just added a couple more things. So the second time that that comes in, I'll play the whole song first. Okay, so if I solo all of that out, here's what we got. Okay, so once again, this bass drum is actually not even being used, so I can actually just leave it muted. So what we've added here are these two snare hits. So one of them is this plastics ensemble from Damage. This sounds really good. So let me solo that out. And I used this to the same thing. Like I'm just trying to continue building up the song and adding a little bit more of a rhythmic interest as it continues on. And then you can hear that there's actually some phasing going on between them, like it's just a little bit of a weird sound. I ended up just leaving that because I didn't have the heart to fix it, honestly. Apparently, otherwise I would have done that. And that's just because I knew it was going to be tucked back in the mix, and I liked the rhythm being what it was. So instead of going and trying to pick apart the actual, filters and everything that were on here, I just left it as the default Studio Plastics ensemble. And then, so this is what we get. And then I think what I did was pretty much just used the velocity. Yep, it's the only one I used. So there's no modulation or expression on this. I just used the velocity to change the impact of this here. So you can see like these blue notes, they're softer than the orange, and then the red here is like just hitting the drum a lot harder. And I used that to create emotion as it continues. In addition to that, I have this one thing that I just called the snare hit. And that is the same thing. It's a plastics ensemble, but what I did here is that I processed it. So let me play this on its own so you can hear what I'm talking about. So we have two hits. And then they're playing together. And so the way that I process it is if you look over here on the left side, first of all, I'm sending to a large reverb. And I actually remixed all of that anyway, so the reverbs don't actually matter that much. But I have taken off all of the low end, all of the high end, and then there was a little bit of a dip right before 500 hertz that I really wanted to get rid of so that we didn't have some of those resonant frequencies. So that's what I did for EQ. After that, I just did a little bit of compression on it to make it stand out in the mix. It's mostly just for the makeup gain. There's 4.5 decibels of makeup gain. That's to help it just stick through and match the volume of the plastics that are underneath it, the ones that are just continuing dun, right? So we just wanted to make sure that those are working together. The other thing I did here, which is really what's making a difference, is a tape delay. So I popped the feedback up to 69. I popped the feedback up to 69%, and then that's just going to make that carry out quite a bit. And then the wet is only a 30% for the output. And this part, I was only using the delay on this one track, so I didn't bother doing a delay return. I just did it right on the track. And then what that does, it's just making this repeat. So if I turn this off, you'll see it's just a single hit. Right? Like that's it. So you turn that delay on and it gives it a little bit of that lasting, gives it that lasting echo, which I really like because of the way that it interacts with this part that continues on. So check this out. See how I add some of that depth to that whole sound? You can still hear it like adding emphasis to each downbeat, and I really like that. I gotta get some more caffeine. So that idea continues in the final choruses that happen as well. I just changed which spots actually had the full plastics ensembles playing, and I did this on purpose so that the chorus builds up over time because it's kind of like a doubled chorus. And the same thing for all the rest of the percussion. So if I solo these out too, so you can hear them, crash cymbal, we have that same timpani roll. That happens 1, 2, 3 times. Actually, this is a little bit different here. It happens twice, and then the third time, it's mimicking all of the I guess you call them stabs, like a dun 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 dun, right? So we're using those stabs that it's just adding some bottom end to. And I know it doesn't sound very good on its own. But that's pretty much it for the percussion. So it's pretty minimal, honestly. The percussion, there's not too much. The strings, however, I spent a lot more time doing and adding in. So I'm going to touch on those. So we already touched the first three tracks of strings, but then as we get further into the song, there's more. And so this is basically after the first chorus, where the percussion has come in, and then it's right before the breakdown. And I'm calling the breakdown this part. I'll play a little bit of it for you to hear. Right, so that continues. So right before that, we have another chorus. I don't remember. It's one of the two. And I added even more of a string ensemble. And then there's also some string stabs, I'm calling them, that lead up to that breaking point, the breakdown, whatever you want to call it. And it's cool because it sounds like it's building up and it's building up and it's building up. And it sounds like it's just going to keep building, but instead it drops off to just that one flute playing. And I love the way that happens. So let me play this so we can hear what that string ensemble is. And you'll also notice at first, it's basically replacing the other string parts, right? Like there's nothing else here, here, or here, but then it adds in and you start having those 3 string parts playing again. And so now we went from 1, 2, 3 notes on the strings, which is technically 2 because these are doubled, to having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we just 3x'd the size of the string ensemble, and you can definitely hear the difference. So I'll play this, just the strings coming into this section. So we got a boom, boom. Let me just make sure I get all the right ones. Okay. And the other part that's missing here, let me solo that out. I missed that. I'll play that again. You'll hear the stabs. Right. So let me solo those out so you can hear them, because that part is important. And this, I'm actually going to leave the piano in because those are copying each other. And then it just breaks down into that one flute. So what's happening with the strings is that I'm using them creatively to just build tension. And like I said in the beginning, I'm aware that the MIDI programming can definitely be done better on this. I'm not claiming to be the best at that. But as far as the arrangement is concerned, I tried to create emotion with these by, let me bring up this string part. I tried to bring emotion into these by having the volume and the expression modulation just slowly come up over time. And like I said, this is the most important part for starting to make this stuff sound human. And I feel like there's always something else you can learn about how to get those to sound even better each time. And so as I play this time through, pay attention to not only you can see the velocities change. So purple and blue is like, this is at 1 velocity and it goes all the way up to 127. So 127, which is probably like this one, is as hard as you can play something or hit something. So not only are the velocities changing and getting heavier and heavier, but also this modulation and the expression. Actually, expression's only here. So the modulation on these is changing as well and has like these peaks and valleys. So this time through, especially if you have headphones on, listen to how the peaks and valleys make a difference for how this gets played. Right. And so, you can see that there's some blocks here because I had actually taken these from different parts. And then since it was the same chord structure, I knew I could put them together. So there's pieces here, like I said, that definitely can be programmed better. I'm not claiming to have this be the tutorial for that part of it. I'm kind of just trying to walk through what I have going on in here. And you'll notice also one of the themes that's happening as this part builds is that the notes start out super long. Like they last for the entire measure. Then the bottom ones keep going to bring the sustenance and like sort of the structure for the chords. And then the tops start doing half notes. And then, it kind of, I'm sorry, I'm actually looking at a longer timeline. So it starts with 2 measures, then it goes down to 1 measure each, and then those continue to start modulating and moving. So they're not just hanging on the same note, and it's building the tension as that part goes. And then you have that final string stab that's actually just adding even more strings in there, which that's this part. Right, and it's giving you that final oomph that you need. And I don't think I covered what I'm using for this, but it's probably the same. Yeah, so I'm using the Albion. Now this is the strings patch. So this is putting the low strings and the high strings together in the same patch. So it includes everything from the bass, cellos, viola, and violins. Now underneath that, these string hits, that is the strings high. So it's only violins and viola. And then I put them on the ostinatum or spic, which is short for spiccato. I put them on that setting because that's like really, that articulation is when they dig into the strings, right? Like as they're playing, it really gives it some oomph to it. And that's exactly what I wanted as they dig in and build into that breakdown. And then as that single flute plays, you have just the cymbal down here is carrying out. And that's exactly what I wanted. I just wanted everything to basically fall off a cliff. And then the flute is kind of what's keeping you floating in a sense. Okay, so then as this continues, right, these 4 flute parts are going on. And basically you're adding 1 flute part every 4 bars or every phrase, whatever that phrase looks like. Then as it starts building, we have these cellos that come in. And at first it was just this, but I wanted to add something that kind of built up. So let me play just the cello parts. And these are, I think about them, I used to play a lot of metal guitar growing up, and there's actually some of the covers on YouTube that you can probably find. They had a lot of chugging guitars, right? Like palm muted guitars, there's just like chung, 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 and like that kind of a sound, if you know what I'm talking about. And that's exactly what I wanted here. And I think it's actually what Pentatonix has in their original version. So I needed to recreate that. So what I did is I had these cellos to start with, which I believe I had MIDI for. And they're playing power chords, which is essentially just root and fifth, but only the, I think it's only the fifth that's actually getting played because of the range of the instruments and where the MIDI was sitting. So this wasn't here at first, so I'll play it without that. And they are out of time. They are out of time because of the way that the samples move together. So, and then those build up a little bit. So I added, let me go here. So I added modulation to the end so that it built up as we continued. So let me. So it's getting louder, but then it also has more weight to the actual notes too, because they're like digging into the strings more. So in order to introduce that part so it didn't just start out of nowhere, I put this little, I think it's a fourth. There's two cello notes that are playing, and I have the modulation, the MIDI volume, and the expression all moving in more or less the same pattern, where it's just like this, like, let me just play it. It's going to be better than I can sing it. That's it. That's all that part is. So when I put that together though, here's what we get. Right? See how that works? And so that introduces that part without making it like, I don't know, it doesn't just come out of nowhere, because all you have are these four flutes playing. And let me show it to you with everything. And of course we're listening to MIDI flutes, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so these continue. I actually cut this measure out that they could have kept playing, but I wanted it to stop so that there was a little bit of room to breathe before that final chorus comes in. And then it gives space for that timpani and the crash to build up. So let me play that going into that last chorus. See how that works? So I wanted that space there on purpose. Now, after that, I continued one of those cellos. And that's just giving some forward movement to that last chorus. And then what I did is I actually started layering all of the other string parts to do the same kind of thing. So you start getting this thumping feeling to the entire chorus. So let me add those. So we got that guy, just violin. Okay, so then this one didn't end up getting used. And then we have this bottom one. And then pretty much all of this is Albion strings. I think all of it. Let me double check the high strings again. Oh, okay. So this one I actually used the cinematic strings, which is a really good library. I like that they're a little bit of a smaller ensemble, so it doesn't get quite as muddy in the mix. I can't honestly tell you why I picked them for this particular patch, because everything else has been never mind. I'm totally wrong. I'm wrong because this one is the one that's muted. That's the one I ended up not using, which means I didn't like that sound. So I actually need to check the string hits down here, which is Albion. Yep, and I'm using the ostinatum. So this is the same thing as the string hits that were right here, right before that breakdown. So those come back in the chorus. And then we have the low strings, which is essentially the same thing, it's Albion again, ostinato spick, but it's a strings low. And so it just keeps that going. So then we add everything. Okay, so then I moved this one up an octave to just add even more emphasis to it. Let it keep building, keep building, keep building. Okay, now we have those stabs. So if I put the piano in, you'll hear that those stabs work together. Okay, and then all of the strings are gone except for this one patch, which is that Albion strings low on the long setting. And it's doing that finishing piece that sounds like this. And then we finish out the song. So that's all kind of just working with this, the flute patches here. So let me take the solos off and you can just hear everything. Let me go back a little bit further. I love that Easter Islands hits here at the end as well. That just adds a little bit of boom as we pull out a whole bunch of instruments. And essentially that is the entire song, and that covers all of the instruments that I've included. I don't think I forgot anything. If you feel like I did, please let me know, and I can make sure that I touch on that. I'm going to be doing the mix next time, which is going to be walking through how I actually mixed this, which will be done in Pro Tools. I did all my arranging here, and then I did all of the mixing in Pro Tools. So, and then the sheet music was done in Sibelius, so if that's something you guys want to see, I can definitely show you that as well. So if you've watched this far into the video, I really appreciate you watching it. If you have not seen the actual Say Something cover, like I said, there's two versions. I will put them on the end screen here that's going to be showing up in just a second for you to check out. And then you can hear how all of this comes together for that final thing, because all you see on the video is just 4 flute parts. And then all the rest of this is going on underneath. And please let me know in the comments what you thought of this. If you want more longer videos like this where I'm breaking down everything, please let me know. If you want me to keep them short, that's fine too. Just trying to find out what you guys like and what you respond to, and how I can help you get to the next place as well for whatever your goals are musically, and you know, see how that looks for you. So thank you for checking this out. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I'll see you in the comment section. All right, make sure you subscribe too if you haven't done that. You have to subscribe. Subscribing is super important for the algorithm. We all know that. And make sure you like the video too. All right, I'm done. Check out the other videos. Have I YouTube spammed enough? Is that enough YouTube spam? Do all of the YouTube stuff you're supposed to. Okay, peace.